The chamber was silent, diplomatic silent, which for the Galactic Concord meant nobody had started screaming yet. Ambassador Illyra Miles of Earth sat with the composed stillness of someone who knew she could flip the table and still win the argument. Her posture radiated calm, but her fingers gripped her data slab with white-knuckled tension. Across from her, seated in chairs that looked about as ergonomic as a rock slide, 7 alien dignitaries shifted uncomfortably. The Galactic Concord's high assembly chamber was carved from obsidian alloy, designed to impress with its sharp, sterile elegance. Today, it merely served as a stage for what the Concord didn't realize would be a historic mistake. High Speaker Vexlor, an iridescent being whose limbs pulsed in gradients of diplomatic distress, was first to speak. Ambassador Miles, with the deepest respect for your species, evolution, the Council has voted to deny full membership to humanity at this time. Illyra blinked once. Slowly. Just to clarify, she began, her voice honeyed with lethal restraint. After decades of jumping through your procedural hoops, attending mandatory cultural de-escalation seminars, and learning all 47 ways to avoid offending a Cryari's secondary mouth folds, Counselor Tsal, a mollusk-like being famous for being very easily offended, winced. You're still denying our application? The representatives exchanged looks. Counselor Grusk, a chittering insectoid whose translator sputtered with effort, offered a carefully chosen phrase. We believe humanity remains behaviorally inconsistent. Lieutenant Commander Merrick Duval, Illyra's aide, flinched. He'd been trained in over a dozen alien etiquette protocols. That didn't matter right now. The ambassador had just slipped into what he internally labeled Mode 7, pleasantly murderous. I see, Illyra said lightly. Inconsistent. Counselor Morvac, the aquatic delegate from Kalon Prime, nodded sympathetically. Your art praises peace, yet your weaponry is creative. Your science advances civilization, yet your culture thrives on controlled chaos. It is contradictory. Illyra tilted her head as though sincerely intrigued. And contradiction troubles you? It concerns us, Vexlor added, voice smoother now, as if trying to throw a soothing bomb on an active volcano. Illyra gave a smile Merrick had seen only twice before. Once during the Voron trade talks when she dismantled an entire economic model with a single slideshow, and again when she told a rogue planetary governor that his navy wouldn't make it past Earth's defense grid. She stood, calmly. Incredible, she murmured, stepping away from the table to pace. You granted full membership to the Threxan Dominion, who once resolved a tax dispute by ritual dismemberment. The Ricari eat their political rivals, literally, and yet it's us you find unsettling. Vexlor's limbs pulsed in what Merrick now recognized as full-body regret. We do not. Fear you, Counselor Morvac interrupted gently. Of course not, Illyra said with a cordial smile. That's why you launched 12 covert observation stations around Terran-controlled space, as soon as we achieved faster-than-light travel. That's why your trade lanes mysteriously rerouted themselves the moment we broke quantum tunneling. And that's why you've redacted every intelligence briefing that includes Earth's military R&D, isn't it? The Council fell silent. Merrick counted 4 of them blinking in asynchronous guilt. Classic. Illyra's smile dropped. She tapped her slab. I was sent here in good faith. We all were. Humanity believed in this alliance. But now, after reviewing your decision, I feel the need to clarify something for the record. She stopped pacing. For the last decade, we've operated under what we in the Earth Diplomatic Corps call Protocol Theta 4. You know it by another name. Merrick stiffened. Polite mode. Illyra's tone sharpened like a knife sliding free of its sheath. You've mistaken our patience for weakness, our cooperation for submission. You thought because we deferred, we lacked leverage. You were wrong. Counselor Saul's coloration shifted to panic blue. Ambassador, Vexlor began, this tone is unproductive. No, Counselor, Ilara said, eyes gleaming, this is direct. You wanted clarity? Here it is. Humanity doesn't need the Concord to thrive. While you've debated our behavioral inconsistencies, we've colonized 8 systems, established trade routes with non-Concord civilizations, and quietly outpaced your research on the Arcturus fissures that have baffled your scientists for centuries. You are threatening us, hissed Morvek. I'm offering perspective, she countered. We came here hoping for allies, but we've prepared for alternatives. Her data pad blinked. A signal had been sent. Across Concord Station, a dozen observers leaned toward their displays as Earth's embassy began broadcasting a quiet but undeniable signal, Protocol Theta 4 deactivated. Back in the council chamber, the delegates sat frozen. You have 1 galactic week, Ilara said, voice low. Reassess your decision. Evaluate our application on merit, not fear, or we'll proceed without you. And I promise, others are more than willing to take our call. She turned and nodded at Merrick. As the 2 Terrans strode toward the exit, not a single alien spoke. The silence that followed wasn't just diplomatic, it was ancestral. The kind of silence that settles in when a species realizes they've misunderstood something very, very dangerous. Inside Earth's embassy on Concordia Station, the lighting shifted subtly, cool, clinical white shifting to crimson amber. It was a hue the staff had only seen once before, and that had ended with 4 trade pacts, 1 regime change, and the official banning of Earth sarcasm at diplomatic functions. Communications Officer Ravi Solari stared at the alert on his terminal, eyes wide, mouth full of half-swallowed synthetic coffee. She did what? He managed to gasp. The embassy AI, clinical as ever, responded. Ambassador Ilara Miles has formally activated Protocol Delta 7. Ravi almost choked. That's the... Yes, the AI confirmed. The we're done being nice protocol. A silence more profound than shock followed. Ravi stared at the pulsing signal on his screen. Protocol Theta 4, offline. Protocol Delta 7, active. Get me Admiral Okoro, he said, straightening up, coffee forgotten. And prep diplomatic fallout templates. For which incident? All of them, Ravi muttered. We'll fill in the details once we know exactly how creatively the ambassador just rewrote galactic etiquette. Meanwhile, across the massive habitat ring of the Unity Council station, news was spreading faster than even the council's bureaucrats could redact it. In the quantum hub, a Medusan savant dropped her stylus. In the observation wing, the RAND diplomat, 4-limbed and accustomed to strict protocol, tilted their head in disbelief. And in the station's crowded civilian atrium, rumors blossomed like invasive Terran ivy. She threatened to blow up the council chamber. No, she just implied Earth had seeded terraforming nanites near council worlds. Actually, I heard she offered Earth's alliance to the consortium. None of them were true, and none of them were false enough to ignore. In the secure lower chamber of the Galactic Concord, the emergency council session was already underway. High Speaker Vexlor was no longer radiating diplomatic serenity. His appendages curled tight in the classic expression of interspecies panic. This is unprecedented, he said, voice modulator struggling to maintain tone. No provisional member has ever responded to rejection with strategic recalibration, corrected Counselor Tsal, whose chromatophores flickered with unease. Let us not pretend this was an emotional outburst. It was calculated. Have we confirmed if the consortium is actually involved? Asked Counselor Grell, mandibles twitching at double speed. The council's intelligence coordinator, 14-eyed, data-stained, exhausted, shifted awkwardly in his hovering chair. We don't know. All we've confirmed is that Earth has existing communications with the free colonies, the Outer Rim traders, and factions outside Concord jurisdiction. Their message left a lot open to interpretation. Deliberately, Vexlor hissed. "They're bluffing," snapped Morvek, though the wobble in his voice betrayed doubt. "Humans thrive on drama." "Perhaps," murmured the Medusan analyst, her crystalline body flickering. "But I've been reviewing their history. When humans declare diplomacy over, they don't bluff. They build." A hush fell over the chamber. The analyst continued. "Human history shows a repeated pattern: prolonged patience, layered diplomacy, followed by swift, irreversible action the moment they deem negotiations hopeless. What they call Delta 7 is not a threat. It is a warning." "To do what?" asked Sol quietly. The Medusan pulsed dimly. "To proceed. With or without us." Back in the Earth Embassy, Elara Miles stood before her team. The room was electric, tension coiled into readiness. "So let me get this straight," said Ravi, finally recovering his voice. "You walked in, told them to reevaluate, and dropped a veiled threat wrapped in a velvet monologue." Elara gave a thin smile. "No, I was very direct. They just didn't realize it until after the doors closed." Merrick Duval leaned against the far wall, arms crossed. "Earth Central wants to know if this was really necessary." "I didn't activate Delta 7 lightly," Elara replied, her voice hardening. "They rejected us not because of danger, but because of fear. We weren't being judged by our contributions. We were judged by our potential to disrupt the status quo." She turned to her comms officer. "Prepare messages to the free colonies and Outer Rim. Full diplomatic authorization. Signal strength, maximum." Ravi blinked. "You're really pulling in our contingency allies." "No," she said. "I'm reminding the Council that we have contingency allies." Behind her, on the main wall, the Earth seal flickered, briefly replaced by a single line of text. "Polite mode deactivated." Merrick let out a slow breath. "You really think this will scare them?" Elara looked back at him. "No, I think it will respect us. And for the first time, they'll actually start listening." It had been exactly 11 hours and 42 minutes since Ambassador Elara Miles walked out of the Galactic Concord's primary chamber and flipped the entire room on its axis. In that time, Concordia Station had entered what the station logs dryly called Protocol Blue State, an internal status for moments of political instability that might result in broken alliances, rogue trade sanctions, or full-scale invasions. It was rarely invoked, and never before for a diplomatic memo. Inside the Council Intelligence Annex, a dozen species worked in quiet panic. "This can't be happening," muttered Analyst Furlick, whose 3 translucent neck fronds wilted with stress. "They activated a protocol, but didn't explain it. They left a breadcrumb trail of hints to contingency alliances. They've done everything right, and it's terrifying." His supervisor, a skeletal Mentari diplomat named Ishal Vor, did not look up from the reports. "It's not what they said, it's what they didn't." Which was that they don't need us. A nearby screen pulsed with data fragments from human channels. Whispered reports about fast-tracked alliances with the free colonies, invitations extended to the Rim trade houses, and most chilling of all, encrypted communications bouncing off a relay only the consortium used. None of them could confirm Earth had replied, but the possibility alone had already shifted 3 Concord fleet deployments and triggered 2 emergency calls to member state militaries. Ishal leaned back. "What we're seeing isn't a bluff. It's leverage, but there's still provisionals." "For now," she said, "and they've just reminded the entire galaxy that the status quo is optional." At the Unity Chamber's upper gallery, the observer's ring was alive with speculation. Dozens of junior envoys from every major power whispered, argued, theorized. And everywhere, the name Earth hung in the air like a spark waiting to catch flame. A Nuven delegate adjusted his voice modulator. Word is, Ambassador Miles implied the humans had already begun terraforming council border zones. That's nonsense, scoffed a Yari envoy. It was just a metaphor. Then why is the entire Concord Enforcement Division rechecking our planetary surveillance logs? The Nuven shot back. Beneath them, the council sat in tense silence, pretending not to notice the rising noise. In the Human Embassy Strategy Suite, Ilera watched the chaos unfold through the station's diplomatic broadcast feeds. Her hands were folded neatly, coffee steaming in front of her. Merrick Duval was pacing. They've launched 3 emergency research inquiries into Protocol Delta 7. One of them tried to bribe an archivist for our internal diplomatic training logs. Ravi stood by a console, gesturing toward a report. And someone from Council Logistics tried to trace our shipping data. They're trying to guess where we're pivoting. Before we do, let them, Ilera replied without looking up. The fear isn't in what we've done. It's in what we might. That's the price of treating restraint as weakness. She finally looked up. We've spent too long playing by their rulebook. Do you think they'll call our bluff? Merrick asked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It's only a bluff if we weren't ready. The room went quiet. Everyone knew the truth. Earth had been preparing for this exact moment since the day its provisional status was granted. Diplomatic ties with Concord allies? Secured. Military capabilities? Obscured but advanced. Cultural influence through media, trade, even cuisine? Spreading. The Council had built its power on predictability, but humans had never been predictable, and they had never needed permission to evolve. Back in the Council's private deliberation chamber, panic had calcified into analysis. Crystalline screens showed overlapping star maps, alliance projections, Earth's expansion rate over the last 20 years. It was troubling. Vexlor's voice was tight. They did not say they'd leave the Council. They didn't need to. They implied the alternatives, said Councillor Morvek. The consortium, the free colonies, they wouldn't partner with the consortium, Saul insisted, though even he didn't sound convinced. A junior aide raised a trembling appendage. Sirs, we've just intercepted a broad-spectrum diplomatic ping from Earth. It's encoded, but it matches our relay frequency. What does it say? Vexlor demanded. The aide hesitated. Just 2 words. Still listening. The chamber fell still. The message wasn't hostile. It wasn't pleading. It was a quiet reminder that Earth hadn't closed the door, but they had certainly walked out of the room and taken the light with them. The inner sanctum of the Concord High Council was silent, not diplomatically silent, not awkwardly silent. It was the kind of silence that wrapped around the mind and pressed down like atmospheric pressure in a vacuum chamber. And at the center of that silence sat a question the Council dared not say aloud. What if humanity meant it? High Speaker Vexlor leaned forward, fingers of translucent plasma coiling around a data rod. The last 2 days had been a blur of cross-species consultations, panic briefings, and increasingly desperate intel scrambles. They didn't threaten us, said Councillor Morvek, pacing back and forth on wet-sounding feet. They didn't make any demands. They didn't even yell. They didn't have to, said Saul, who sat motionless. For his species, motionlessness was rarely a sign of calm. It was preparation. A low chime echoed as the chamber's central table lit up, an AI projection of Earth's historical diplomatic activity rising in luminous spirals. At the center pulsed a glowing node labeled Protocol Delta 7, Historical Triggers, Response Patterns, Consequences. The projection AI spoke calmly. as if unaware it was giving several of the most powerful beings in the galaxy a collective ulcer. In 93% of recorded instances where human diplomacy shifts from cooperative to adversarial posture, conflict does not follow immediately. Instead, Earth's response strategy shifts toward unilateral action. Objectives are redefined, limits removed. Historical data suggests that once Earth ceases seeking permission, progress accelerates. Progress, asked Morvek, his gill flaps pulsing in unease. Colonization, resource acquisition, tech expansion, and in some cases, full regime change of opposing parties. Saul's chromatophores dimmed. They plan. They prepare, corrected the AI. What appears to be emotional unpredictability is, upon analysis, a recurring behavioral pattern. Humanity exhausts every option for harmony and then ceases to ask permission. There was a long pause. They've done this before, Vexlor murmured. Just not on this stage. The hologram shimmered, shifting to scenes from Earth's past, diplomatic breakdowns followed by scientific breakthroughs, trade collapses followed by alternate coalitions, were only when every last door had been closed. Counselor Melkra, the amphibious delegate from Nigia Delta, leaned forward. This is why we're afraid. Morvek bristled. Because they escalate. No, Melkra said, her voice a watery whisper. Because they don't need escalation. Because even without war, they win. She gestured toward the projection. They adapt to pressure like no other species in the galaxy. You squeeze them, they grow teeth. Box them in, they reinvent the box. You deny them approval, and they build the next empire on the ruins of your vote. And now, said Vexlor grimly, we've denied them. Elsewhere on Concordia Station, whispers had turned into doctrine. In the Plaza Cafe, a Cleur merchant murmured, I heard Earth has already terraformed 24 planets, just in case. In the hydroponics gardens, a Threxan student asked, do humans really weaponize suns? In the zero-gravity recreation dome, a Saren youth replied, who cares? They're the only species that told the council to its face, we're done asking. No one corrected them, because the story had grown beyond policy now. It had become reputation. And in a galaxy full of ancient powers, nothing moved faster than fear disguised as admiration. Back in the human embassy, Ilara Miles stood in the center of the briefing room, surrounded by walls of data, whispers, intercepted commentary. Ravi had compiled them all into a single loop, reactions, analyses, shifts in station activity. We've destabilized their confidence, Merrick said, arms folded. They're second-guessing everything. Good, Ilara replied. They should. She walked to the window, where the stars gleamed just beyond the reinforced glass. They spent decades calling us unpredictable, dangerous, contradictory, but none of that was ever the problem. Ravi frowned. Then what was? She turned back toward them. We're not dangerous because we're violent. We're dangerous because we don't break. Not in famine, not in war, not in chaos. We find a way. We adapt, we absorb, we evolve. And if we get knocked down, we turn the fall into momentum. She tapped the console beside her. A new message flashed into the Concord diplomatic channel. We didn't come to threaten. We came to join. The rest depends on how well you handle truth. Merrick stared at the words. That's not diplomacy. No, Ilara said softly. It's a mirror. The Galactic Council chamber had been designed for diplomatic grandeur. Vaulted ceilings etched with starlight, a circular floor plan to ensure equal voice among all species, and sound-dampening walls meant to absorb tension like cosmic insulation. But today, the chamber was a crucible. Ambassador Ilara Miles stepped forward, her polished boots clicking against polished obsidian. Her uniform was immaculate, her posture effortlessly composed. Her expression, a cordial calm that Merrick Duval, standing just behind her, knew could shatter titanium. To the untrained, She looked serene. To the trained eye, especially anyone who had studied Terran behavioral psychology, she looked like a predator humoring prey that hadn't realized it was being stalked. Ambassador Miles, began high speaker Vexlor, his voice translator pitching his words to a neutral harmonic. We are surprised by your request to readdress the chamber so soon after our previous deliberation. Ilera offered a polite nod. It's important to clarify misunderstandings, especially when they threaten to redefine the very nature of this council. She approached the center of the floor as the 7 alien representatives glanced at each other. Counselor Tsal shifted slightly, chromatophores flickering through unease. Counselor Morvek's amphibious fingers twitched beside a data pad. Even the stoic Medusan observer pulsed with subdued dissonance. We reviewed your membership denial. Ilera began, tone still warm. And while your official justification cited behavioral inconsistency, the subtext was clear. She turned in a slow, deliberate half-circle. You're afraid of us. Several representatives made the mistake of flinching. Not a word had been raised, not a threat made, but the chamber had grown colder, somehow, like a gravity what was pulling the air taut. That's understandable, Ilera continued. We're new, fast, unconventional. You don't know what to expect from us, and what you do know unsettles you. Vexlor's glow fluctuated. Ambassador. But let's not pretend this is about inconsistency, she cut in smoothly. You've granted membership to species who solve budgetary disputes with venom duels, who require 4 blood oaths to ratify a treaty, who, if I recall correctly, accidentally devoured an ambassador last cycle and were still fast-tracked for economic integration. Merrick winced slightly. That had been an awkward incident. This isn't about danger, Ilera said. It's about control. You control the narrative, the pace, the framework. And then Earth arrived and smiled. Saul's membrane quivered. Ilera stepped forward. You didn't realize it, but the moment we stopped asking for permission, the rules changed. Behind her, the main chamber screen flickered to life. A projection of Earth's current alliance map unfolded in pulsing threads, official and unofficial. It glowed with routes, data, factional agreements, exploratory ventures, and annotated whispers of unauthorized partnerships. The room froze. Free colonies, Ilera said, gesturing. Outer Rim trading bloc. Sovereign Science Accord. And, of course, your personal favorite, non-aligned consortium factions. That's speculative, barked Morvek. It's ongoing, Ilera replied, not missing a beat. Half of these dialogues began before your decision, and the rest were activated after, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. She let the silence settle before continuing. The thing you feared isn't that humans are dangerous. It's that we're disruptive, that we'll break your systems, your order, your equilibrium. She looked up, eyes sharp. You're right. Saul sat still, his chromatophores frozen on a dull, alert red. But here's what you've misunderstood, she continued. We didn't come to destroy your council. We came to challenge it, to grow it, to remind it that safety isn't stasis, that peace isn't complacency, that progress requires a little friction. Vexlor tried to rally. You speak as though the Concord is afraid of progress. I speak, Ilera replied, as someone who's been smiling politely through 27 separate committees meant to evaluate human temperament. She stepped back, eyes sweeping the chamber. This isn't about our worthiness. It's about your willingness. A long pause, and then, like a ripple through a still lake, she smiled. Not warmly, not politically, but deliberately, the same smile she gave during the Proxima trade crisis, the one the Centauri envoy later described as the moment I knew we had lost and she hadn't even spoken yet. "We'll give you 1 galactic week," she said simply, "not because we're impatient, but because in that time we'll likely unlock another energy signature in the Arcturus rift your scientists still think is a gravitational mirage." Sol opened his mouth, closed it. Vexlor's tone shifted. "You're demanding an emergency vote?" "No," Ilera replied. "I'm offering one last chance to show the galaxy that you lead through courage, not comfort." She turned, gave a final nod, and walked toward the exit with Merrick close behind. Just before the doors closed, she paused, just long enough for every recording drone and every watching diplomat to catch it. That smile again. The outer corridors of Unity Station hummed with energy, not the kind generated by engines or fusion cores, but the kind that came from whispered rumors and diplomatic tension coiled too tight. In the wake of Ambassador Ilera Miles' speech to the Council, the entire station felt like it was holding its breath. Inside Earth's embassy, the mood was different. Focused, calm, controlled chaos, wrapped in the pleasant scent of brewed Terran coffee and glowing tactical overlays. "Status?" Ilera asked, not looking up from the message she was drafting. Lieutenant Commander Merrick Duval crossed his arms, watching the feed scroll beside him. "Free colonies are drafting a joint declaration of intent," he said. "The Rim Trade Bloc sent a request for expedited trade corridors." And he hesitated. Ravi Solari turned from the communication console. "The consortium just sent us flowers." Ilera finally looked up. "Flowers?" "Technically a bouquet of crystalline spores from Belthon Prime." Ravi clarified. "They're meant to imply respect, interest, and a hint of existential dread." "Charming," Ilera muttered. Merrick raised an eyebrow. "What do we send back?" A silence long enough to make them second-guess it. Ilera said. Ravi grinned. "Human diplomacy, now with psychological warfare." "No," she corrected. "With clarity." She tapped her data slab, bringing up the Concord's member charter. One clause highlighted in amber. Article 47B, Discriminatory Application Standards. The clause every counselor had hoped she wouldn't notice. "Send a formal message to the Concord's legal committee," Ilera said. "Request a review under 47B. Keep it brief. 1 paragraph." Merrick leaned in. "You're going legal?" "I'm giving them a window," she said. "A small, rapidly closing one." Ravi nodded, already transmitting. "Do we want to leak it?" "Absolutely," Ilera said. "Let every observer on this station know we didn't just walk away. We walked the walk. We used the system before we consider alternatives." A pause. "And after?" Merrick asked. "After," Ilera said, "we start writing our rules." In the Concord's legal annex, panic spread faster than even the most aggressive interstellar fungi. The moment Earth's Article 47B request landed, the chamber lit up like an emergency beacon. Every senior counselor, who had once scoffed at Earth's obsession with legal clarity, now understood what it had cost them. Because humanity had not just come prepared for diplomacy, they had come prepared to win it. Aid reports flowed across the chamber. Earth's filing is airtight. They've already activated parallel resolutions with trade bloc allies. If they walk now, it will fracture the Rim powers. The worst part, the humans hadn't made a threat. They'd made a case, and it was damning. At the next emergency council session, Ilera stood again in the center of the chamber. This time, the council chamber wasn't filled with contempt or caution. It was filled with careful attention. Vexlor tried to appear composed. "Ambassador Miles, we acknowledge receipt of your legal motion." Ilera smiled. "Wonderful. I'm glad you read it." Sol's chromatophores pulsed in what Merrick had learned was the equivalent of a migraine. "I'd like to clarify something," Ilera said, voice ringing through the chamber. Earth's goal has never been to force your hand. We respect the Concord. We admire its legacy, but we also expect honesty. She glanced around the room. You judged us by our contradictions, by our messiness. You feared our pace, our creativity, our defiance of convention. She leaned forward slightly. We've heard all your reasons, and now it's time to hear ours. A screen behind her flickered to life, showing Earth's achievements: terraformed colonies, cross-species medical innovations, peacekeeping operations in unstable sectors. Then it shifted to something else: council surveillance logs, military drills, observation protocols pointed squarely at human space. Gasps echoed through the chamber. You say we're not ready, but you've been preparing for us. Ilara said, calm. You didn't reject us because we might destabilize the Concord. You rejected us because we might redefine it. The chamber went still. I'll give you one standard week to reevaluate our application on merit, not fear, or protocol, or prejudice. She stepped away, and if not, Vexlor asked softly. Ilara stopped. Then Earth will move forward, she said, and when we do, history will record who extended a hand and who recoiled from their own shadow. Then she walked out, leaving behind silence. Again, only this time, it wasn't from shock. It was from understanding. The secure chamber beneath the Galactic Concord's central dome was shielded from every conceivable external influence: radiation, electromagnetic waves, quantum interference, and most importantly, press leaks. And yet, somehow, everyone already knew. The council was panicking. Counselor Tsal stood stock-still as two aides hovered behind him with data slates filled with draft apologies, contingency statements, and legal justifications that contradicted each other every 3 paragraphs. High Speaker Vexlor tapped his appendages rhythmically against the table, an old neural focusing gesture, typically used in moments of quiet contemplation. He was using it to not scream. Earth filed under Article 47B, said Legal Director Ayel Zoth, eyes blinking asynchronously. Their motion is clean. Their evidence is damning. They've left us one move: reacceptance under full membership status, or open ourselves to review by the Oversight Tribunal. Counselor Morvek was pacing in wet, angry loops. You mean we have to vote yes? No, Ayel Zoth corrected calmly. You have to consider whether the alternative is losing half the political stability in this quadrant. He tapped the projection screen, which now displayed 3 growing threat nodes. The Outer Rim Trade Federation, accelerating private deals with Earth. The Free Colonies, issuing supportive statements in 12 languages. The Consortium, suddenly very interested in Earth's gravitational collapse experiments. If humanity walks away, Ayel Zoth said, they don't walk alone. Tsal's skin flushed a dull gray-green. We made a mistake, murmured Counselor Melkra, who had been watching all of it unfold from the sidelines. No, Vexlor replied, quieter than usual. We made many. In the upper galleries of Concordia Station, young diplomatic aides, analysts, and staffers whispered like school children on the edge of a revelation. She filed under 47B, one whispered. With documentation, confirmed another. And the surveillance data? Real. Confirmed. Earth's embassy released a redacted summary to the press channels the moment she left the chamber. That's not diplomacy, the RAND staffer muttered. That's command presence. One junior Jirani scribbled on a notepad. Note to self, never play poker with humans. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Concord's public comms hub, the data lines burned. Messages between member states. Encrypted calls between trade delegates. Multiple requests for clarification on Earth's current diplomatic posture. The number of inquiries from neutral observers spiked by 700%. And above it all, the Earth Embassy's public channel broadcast a single unencrypted message on loop. Humanity awaits the Council's decision with full transparency, good faith, and active alternatives. It was polite, terrifyingly polite. Back in the inner council room, a Medusan analyst dimmed her internal lights to a cool blue, a sign of reluctant awe. I have reviewed Earth's historical patterns again, she said. This was never an outburst. It was a posture shift. Explain, demanded Vexlor. Human diplomacy follows a two-mode protocol, she said. Mode 1, patience. Long, careful, thorough, layered in courtesy, often self-effacing. And the other? Asked Saul. Mode 2, she said. Strategic finality. Once engaged, they no longer wait for consensus. They operate on calculated momentum, not emotion, not impulse. Resolve. She paused. What Ambassador Miles activated is what their own records refer to as polite mode, off. The room went quiet. Elzoff finally spoke again. The only question is whether we bring them back in or watch what happens when a Death World species builds a new galactic framework without us. Morvek growled. You make it sound like they could replace the Council. Elzoff looked him in the eyes. They wouldn't have to, he said. They'd just have to make it optional. Back at the Earth Embassy, Ilara Miles sipped her coffee while watching the news scroll. She was seated casually, but her team knew better than to mistake that for relaxation. Council chamber emergency closed session just ended. Ravi reported. Vexlor's aides are ghosting the usual news feeds. No statement released yet. Give them time, Ilara murmured. Merrick crossed the room with a data pad. Legal just updated us. They estimate Council is trying to reframe their rejection as procedural oversight. That's the best they can do, Ilara said. They're trying to exit the trap without admitting they were in one. And if they don't change the vote? Merrick asked. She smiled just a little. Then we escalate to Phase 3. Ravi blinked. Phase 3. You'll know it when you see it. She stood. Get ready. The vote's coming sooner than they planned. The halls of Unity Station were never quiet, but today they buzzed with a new kind of energy, tense, anticipatory, and entirely speculative. Somewhere between the council chambers and the diplomatic lounge, a cultural tectonic shift had taken place, and no one knew where the fault line actually was. Rumors fluttered like banners in a solar wind. She threatened to weaponize gravity. A merchant whispered in the food court, sloshing his drink in excitement. No, a Nuven crystal dealer insisted. She just reminded the council that Earth had seeded terraforming nanites in 17 border worlds. Passive-aggressive agriculture. A third, a silver-skinned Jorian, leaned in close. You're both wrong. My cousin's in comms. She said Ambassador Miles told them Earth could implode 3 stars with sarcasm alone. None of these things were true, but none of them were exactly false, either, because no one knew what the humans were actually capable of, and that not weapons, not tech, not alliances was the real weapon. Uncertainty. In the market atrium, a small drone hovered above a cafe patio where 3 mid-level diplomatic aides were nursing alien cocktails and existential dread. Did you see her face? Asked the Threxan aide, right before she left the chamber. That smile. Predatory, the Tauren confirmed, his hand trembling slightly as he lifted his drink. No, not predatory, corrected the Zayli translator beside them. Confident, like she knew every possible outcome and had already outmaneuvered them all. The drone blinked silently. It wasn't just an idle observer. It was recording. Dozens more floated across the station, officially part of the station's non-invasive media network, unofficially rerouting data directly to Council intelligence. Each one captured snippets, like they survived their own extinction-level events. They weaponized solar flares into communication systems. They drink something called espresso and laugh at pain. The footage when stitched together by the Concord's data analysts, didn't create a clear picture. It created a legend. In a dim, mirrored lounge on the diplomatic observation deck, a cluster of junior ambassadors shared encrypted messages and real-time reactions. Protocol Delta 7 was real, said a crystalline envoy from the outskirts of Poltar space. It was buried in Terran internal documentation, but it exists. What is it? Asked a Serani diplomat. A pause. It's not a battle protocol, the envoy said. It's a diplomatic posture shift, from consensus building to unilateral action, from requests to declarations. It's polite mode off. A ripple of unease moved through the group, and then a voice from the far corner, soft, gravelly. You all think that's the scary part, said an old Velthry advisor, long retired but still respected. Everyone turned. The scary part, he said, is they gave us a warning. They filed it. They told us what they were doing, and we still panicked. Back in the Concord's intelligence core, analysts were failing upward at an unprecedented rate. Charts, simulations, political forecasting, nothing made sense anymore. Earth had broken all their models. They're not playing the game, muttered one strategist. They're rewriting it, said another. And the worst part, asked Director Ayelzoff, walking into the analysis hub. Everyone turned. They're not being reckless, he said. They're being disciplined. And there's nothing more terrifying than disciplined chaos. He pointed to a new alert pinging on the main screen. Incoming inquiry from the Larian Authority. Subject: if the Concord rejects Earth again, may we initiate separate negotiations. The room fell dead silent. It had begun. In the Earth Embassy, Ilera watched the chaos bloom. Like a nebula, Ravi walked in with a datapad, blinking. We're getting dozens of messages from unaffiliated parties. Requests, apologies, offers. Merrick looked up. From who? The Larians, the Valerii Compact, 2 non-council research networks, and an anonymous consortium relay just asked if we still liked surprises. Ilera sipped her coffee. I do, she said. Ravi frowned. Is this getting out of hand? No, Ilera replied. This is the hand. She stood. And we haven't even played the ace yet. The Galactic Concord Hall had never been this full. Every seat in the observer gallery was occupied. Dozens of species, some allied, some unaffiliated, all alert, sat upright in taut anticipation. Holographic recorders hovered like birds of prey, ready to capture the moment history pivoted. And at the center of it all, the 7 high council members sat beneath the Concord seal, faces composed, limbs still, but every appendage a study in tension. High Speaker Vexlor stood. The matter before us is the application of Earth, Sol Federation, Terran Alliance, humanity for full membership in the Galactic Concord. He began. His voice was steady, but his bioluminescent edges rippled with suppressed anxiety. He glanced at the silent Earth delegation seated opposite. Ambassador Ilera Miles, hands folded. Merrick Duval, stone-faced beside her. Ravi Solari, calm but visibly vibrating beneath the table. No outbursts, no bravado, just presence. The vote will be conducted by secured neural relay, Vexlor continued. All 7 council members must submit their decisions simultaneously. Results will display after authentication. He sat. The chamber dimmed. 7 neural pulses activated across the chamber. Quiet. Absolute. And then, on the central screen, a simple message bloomed into being. Membership approved. 7-0. No cheers. Not yet. Just silence. Then whispers. Then gasps. Then, at last, shock becoming acceptance. The gallery erupted into movement. Delegates stood. Observers blinked. The room was alive. Earth had not only been accepted, it had been unanimously accepted. Ilara didn't move for 3 seconds. Then she rose, smoothed her jacket, and nodded once. On behalf of humanity, she said, "We accept." Simple, quiet, devastating. Vexlor stepped forward, clearly reading from a prepared script. With this vote, Earth gains full rights, privileges, and responsibilities of a Galactic Concord member, effective immediately. And Saul added, his chromatophores flickering like dying embers, with our deepest admiration. There it was, the real moment, not the vote, the respect. 2 hours later, the official reception was underway in the Unity Station's grand atrium, a soaring gallery of light, gravity-tuned zones, and circulating canapes designed to please 99% of known biology. Ilara stood near the central fountain, a drink in hand, and watched the room orbit her. Merrick approached. "You know, they still don't know how it happened." "They know," Ilara replied, sipping something carbonated and molecularly suspicious. "They just don't want to admit it." Ravi joined them. "I've counted 6 different ambassadors who've come over, tried to apologize, and chickened out halfway through." Ilara chuckled softly. "Let them sweat," she said. "It's good for them." Just then, Counselor Tsal approached, robe shimmering, eyes lowered. "Ambassador Miles," he began, voice tight. "I misjudged." She turned to face him, holding his gaze. "I know." Saul hesitated. "Your people have an unusual definition of diplomacy." "We like results," she said, "and we don't confuse manners with permission." He nodded slowly. "Perhaps we've underestimated that distinction for too long." He moved on, vanishing back into the crowd. Merrick leaned in, lifting a glass. "So what now?" Ilara raised hers in kind. "To polite mode," she said. "Optional." They clinked glasses, and the sound echoed louder than thunder. The Unity Station was quiet now, not silent, but settled, like a great cosmic breath had finally been exhaled. The vote was over. The reception had ended, and most of the galaxy's watching eyes had moved on, satisfied that the Terran question had finally been answered. But for Ambassador Ilara Miles, that was exactly the moment when the real work began. She stood alone in the private viewport chamber, overlooking the galactic sea. Stars glinted against the void. The orbital path of Earth's newly commissioned flagship, the SS Endeavour, shimmered faintly in the distance. Footsteps echoed behind her. "You were right," said Vexlor, his voice more subdued than ever. "We judged you before we understood you." Ilara didn't turn. "You understood us. You just didn't like what it meant." Vexlor approached, slow and careful. "We thought you would escalate, threaten, lash out." She finally looked at him. "We didn't need to." He studied her, as if still trying to process what humanity really was. "You brought legal precedent, strategic alliances, and quiet inevitability. You turned our own systems into your leverage." Ilara smiled. "We came prepared." A pause. Then, "Will you lead with this intensity now that you're inside the council?" Her reply came without hesitation. "No." That caught him off guard. "No, we didn't do this to dominate. We did it because we believe in what this could be, but only if it evolves. And if it doesn't..." Her eyes were calm. "Then we build something better." "Vexlor, let that hang in the air. You humans are terrifying." Ilara's smile widened. "We're honest." Elsewhere aboard Unity Station, Ravi Solari and Merrick Duval sat in the embassy lounge, half exhausted, half euphoric. "So," Ravi said, swirling a drink, "do we go back to regular diplomacy now?" Merrick chuckled. "Define regular." "You know," Ravi shrugged. "Politeness. Forms. Treaties without subtext." Merrick took a long sip. "Not a chance." A pause. "You know," Ravi said slowly, "I think they actually respect us now." "More than that," Merrick replied. I think they understand we're not here to burn things down. We're here to remind them that comfort isn't peace. Still, Ravi mused. We've rewritten half their protocols, exposed their surveillance, baited the consortium into blinking, and won with what? A smile and a legal clause. Merrick leaned back. We didn't win because of the clause, he said. We won because we knew when to stop asking. Back in the viewport, Vexlor took a long breath. And this polite mode, you'll reactivate it. Ilara raised an eyebrow. We'll use it when it suits us. But you've seen what happens when it doesn't. He nodded slowly. I think I preferred it on. I know, she said softly. And then, with a final look at the stars, Ilara turned away. She had places to be, councils to guide, systems to change, and a galaxy, finally, starting to listen